Hey again, we're back this week with part 2 of the history of Saorsa. I've been kinda ill the past few days, so hence the delay in getting this put up since I've been bedridden for a few days straight. So yeah, sorry if I sound a little off this time. The coughing fits and such will be edited out, but yeah, just a heads up this time around. Anyway, so we covered last time how the Æserians basically made Saorsa what it is. Kinda. Well, we didn't get into the specifics of how they made Saorsa function in that way. For that, we're gonna need to add a new world, some Druids, and an Æserian with not entirely delusions of godhood. So, Saorsa had a purpose now, but the goal was to make it a reality. The power needed to mold and reshape an entire planet is pretty intense, though given the specific planet in question with literally thousands of dead gods just lying around, maybe there was a potential source of power to be used after all. Indeed, Saorsa's location for the rise of the dragons wasn't blind luck, but rather there was a purpose behind it. The barrier between regular space and the Dirac Sea is exceptionally thin upon Saorsa, and can be crossed through quite easily. To understand why this is important, we must first look at what the Dirac Sea is. In physics, it was a theory that there's an infinite sea of negative charged energy. This predicted things like positrons and so on, but it turned out to be not too accurate towards reality in the end. The reason for this is that the Dirac Sea exists within the universe Saorsa is set in, but it's an infinite expanse of negatively charged magical energy instead, known colloquially as etheric energy. Well, kinda. Rather, the specific details are a bit technical, but to be blunt, actual etheric energy exists as positive magical energy, with the negative existing within the Dirac Sea. Rather than directly interact with the volatile positive energy, the method of casting in the Saorsian universe is to manipulate the vastly more stable negative energy, which causes a reciprocal effect in reality with the positive energy. With the advent of Saorsa as a graveyard for gods, and already having a rather thin barrier between these two forms of space, the creation of a sister planet, Seireadan, was a trivial matter. A negative energy copy of Saorsa, which lied just beyond the veil, the Carmen parlance for the gap between the Dirac Sea and reality, or more specifically, the veil which lay between Saorsa and Seireadan proper. The Æserian Lelielia was given the task of constructing and maintaining Seireadan, and she took to it with great grace and fervor, building an entire planet from scratch, which was inextricably connected to Saorsa itself. This sister planet was built to be a testbed for reality, where the infinite expanse of negative energy could be used to warp and shape the world, to create new species, alter the landscape, and so on. If a test worked out, a section of the veil was lifted, and the changes spilled out into Saorsa proper. A new predator might be allowed to enter into the world, a perfect challenge for those imprisoned upon Saorsa. A mountain range may be constructed safely upon Seireadan with relatively little effort, and then the topography of Saorsa would shift to match that of its sister world once it had been finished and confirmed ready for use. Of course, to be given the power of a goddess and virtually all other gods being dead, or at least staying out of matters after that tiny affair with the Omniwar, Lelielia began to think of herself as such, a goddess of change, a primal being who brings the light of life to the ultraviolet lit world of Seireadan, and then to Saorsa proper. She began to become known as the Life Giver. And, well, a goddess need not do all the work herself, however. Of course she can, but that's besides the point. She has followers to do that for her. The first Druids were individuals closely tied to nature who were brought to Saorsa. Lelielia parted the veil and invited them into her grove, gracing them with a greater task, to design and perfect the wild, untamed nature of Seireadan. These Druids took to their charge with eager ambition, being so closely tied to nature as they were already, and now being given direct access to the very base level of nature that they may dictate its growth and keep it under control, while also keeping it safe from harm. After all, with the veil being so thin between the two sister worlds, every once in a while a group would enter into Seireadan uninvited and begin to stir up trouble. Someone had to take care of such meddling. The Warden Druids were then created as a subsect, charged with hunting down and expunging offending individuals from Seireadan back to the confines of Saorsa where they belonged. Lelielia would not harbor such within her realm. In fact, she barely could tolerate their presence within Saorsa itself. Seireadan was the cradle of life, the origin of storms, and the nexus of the primal truth which reality was founded upon. To be limited to this realm, only able to shift Saorsa after it had been perfected in Seireadan first, was practically an insult. To see Saorsa swarming and becoming infested, littered with creatures that were unfit to grace the surface of Seireadan, it began to gnaw at Lelielia. Over the centuries, she became more convinced of her goddesshood and of the unworth of Machiel and her servants. Quietly, Lelielia began to plot to overthrow Saorsa, to remove the veil entirely, to let the entire infinite expanse of the Dirac Sea and Seireadan upon the face of Saorsa in an endless tide of change and vibrant life. Such matters are best handled without playing one's hand, however. The vast bulk of the Druids don't even know of their mistress's plans, and Lelielia herself knows not of Machiel's own machinations brewing in the background. The two worlds will come into open conflict sooner or later. Of that there's no doubt. The only real questions left are exactly when and how this conflict will occur, and how the interactions of those individuals residing upon Saorsa will react. Will they view the invasion from beyond the veil a release to freedom, or just another challenge to best, another dictator to fell? The first expansion content of Saorsa is intended to be a book based around Seireadan, the ultraviolet forest, the Dirac Sea, and the Druids that reside there, as well as the war between Lelielia and Machiel, which is brewing. That won't happen for a while, but yeah, basically, that's what's in store for the future. For now, though, I think we've covered enough for today, brief though it may have been. So with that, I'm out. I'll see you next time.